it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing a layout for Papermaze. And this month, rather than working with a collection, I'm going to be working with some mixed media products that are available in the store. So I'm going to do two blogs. This one today is going to be based on what I call dry mixed media, just mixed media without adding lots of water. And then I'm going to do a second blog later in the month with more kind of wet and messy mixed media. Hopefully encourage some of you who might be a little bit nervous about dipping your toes into the world of mixed media to give it a go. Hopefully I'll show you that it's not as scary as it might first seem. So for today's layout, I'm going to be using Distress Oxide Ink Pads. Now Vanessa at Papermaze has just had a restock of these, so there are loads of lovely colours in stock. And I've got some papers and embellishments from Vicki Boutin's Fernwood collection. And I've had my eye on this hexagon paper for ages, been dying to use it. And today has given me the perfect opportunity. So I'm going to try and colour match some of my Distress Oxide ink pads to the colours in these hexagons. And you saw at the beginning there, I've got a set of just die cut white tags on a book ring. And every time I get a new mixed media product, I just do a little colour swatch on that tag. So I've got, I pulled out my Distress Oxide ones just now, and you saw me just trying to sort of match up the colours with these hexagons to see what I've got. And then off camera, I quickly trimmed all these hexagons down, and I've arranged them on my page, trying to spread the colours out evenly so that when I add my mixed media behind it, I don't have kind of all the blues in one area or all the oranges in one. So just trying to spread those colours evenly. And then I'm going to use my edge distressing tool and go around the edges of all of those and get those distressed and roughed up. So whilst I'm doing that, I'll talk a little bit about the ink pads themselves. Most of you will probably know you can get Distress Oxide ink pads and you can get Distress ink pads. Most of them, if not all of them, you get the same shade in both the oxide and the ink. And when I first started out with mixed media, I didn't really know the difference. So I decided that the inks were a little bit more vibrant. So I focused more on the inks and built up a massive stash of the inks, ignoring the oxides. And now a few years down the line, I've decided I need the oxides too. Both give a slightly different effect, and I sometimes find that they give different colours. So especially with my chipped sapphire, if I add water to my Distress ink, it's a lovely dark navy blue. But if I add water to my oxide, sometimes it goes a little bit purple. I don't know why, it doesn't do it with all the colours, but I have noticed it with Distress Oxide. So if I'm doing wet mixed media, I tend to use my Distress inks. I find that the colour is a bit more vibrant, where the Distress Oxides are a bit more kind of creamy and chalkier look on the page. I also find them a bit wetter as well, so they do take a little bit longer to dry. But I do prefer to use my Distress Oxides when I'm doing what I call dry mixed media, which is what I'm doing here today. So I'm going to use some ink blending brushes, rub them over the ink pad, and then rub them in a circular motion over my background. And I love to do that with Distress Oxides because I find that that creamy, chalky texture just means they blend together better. So if you wanted to try and create an ombre effect, for example, using blending brushes and ink pads, I would definitely go for the oxides, because where you've got like your red going into your orange, going into your your yellow, they will blend a lot more naturally and not as patchy, whereas I find the Distress inks can be a little bit patchy when you're trying to blend. So definitely go for my oxides over my inks when it comes to dry mixed media. You can use oxides for wet mixed media as well. You'll just get a kind of more of a chalky looking or creamier looking colour, I find, compared to the Distress inks. And oxides do take a little bit longer to dry. But for this layout, we're going to use oxides. I want to do some dry blending. So one of the things I invested in recently were some new ink blending brushes. Now there's loads of different ones on the market. Ranger do their own versions, the Tim Holtz ones where you've got the like little round foam pads that you put on the end of a wooden stick. You also get the kind of foam Dauber ones that are like a domed foam on the end of a stick. I've got the ones with like almost like makeup brushes and I've got new ones. So the ones I've got now are coloured handles, and they've got white bristles. You'll see them in a minute. and I'm trying to keep one for each colour. So obviously the blue handled one I will use for my blue ink pads, the red one for my red, and so on. And having the white bristles really helps as well, because you can see what colour is on them, and they wash really easily in water as well. And I find that just having that handle and the bristles just gives me a bit more control, and I can control how sort of heavy I'm pressing and how much ink is going on the page. So you can see here one of these handled brushes. I'm using the blue one for the blue ink pad. Now the inks I'm using today, I've tried to match up with the coloured hexagons. So I've got Broken China, which is what I've just used there. This next one here is Mermaid Lagoon, and it's more of a turquoisey shade of blue. I'm also going to use Chipped Sapphire to match up with those darker blue hexagons. Then for the green, I've got, what's it called? Rustic Wilderness, but I do cheat a little bit with the green, you'll see in a minute, and I'll come back to that. The red one, I've got Picked Raspberry, and then that lovely kind of dark orangey red colour, I'm going to use two different oxide pads. I'm going to use a mix of Barn Door and Ripe Persimmon, just to try and match the colour a little bit closer. So as you can see with these brushes, I am just blending in a circular motion directly onto the page. There is no gesso on my background. I'm not going mad adding loads of water. I don't want the colours to all blend, so there's no need for gesso. I'm just literally using my blending brush and my ink pad and just adding that ink directly to my background. Now what you would have seen me do if you were watching and not listening to my waffle is I've stuck all these hexagons together so I can move them as one piece, just to make this step a little bit easier. I then drew around the edge of them with a pencil, just that outside edge, so I could see where I was going, and I know now where I need to apply that ink. Now you would have seen me cheat a little bit there with the green. The Rustic Wilderness was great for that green one that's at the top of the screen at the moment. It's going to be the bottom in a minute. But that kind of lime green one at the top, it was a bit too dark. So I've actually added some Mowed Lawn Distress ink over that. And I don't have that one as a Distress Oxide, so I have had to pull out my Distress ink. And where I drew that pencil line, it gave me my guideline. So I've started my blending inside that pencil line, so I know that that is going to be covered up by my hexagon, and that's just kind of like a tester area where I can focus on getting the right amount of pressure and blending the ink properly. And then as I'm happy with the amount of pressure, I move the brush outwards, outside of that pencil line, to the area that I know is going to show outside of that hexagon. And I've not added loads of colour, just enough to give a kind of glow around the outside edge of those hexagons. And as you can see on the page here, it looks an absolute mess. The middle, just, you know, there's nothing there. There doesn't need to be, because it's all going to be covered up. The colours aren't blended into one another at all, but again, they don't really need to be. They are just to sit behind those hexagons and give some subtle mixed media. And there was nothing difficult about that process at all. It was really simple, and even a beginner who's never picked up an ink pad or a blending brush could give this a go. And I find it really therapeutic as well, brushing with Distress Oxides. So definitely something I would recommend. You would also have seen, before I stuck my hexagons in place, I added some water splatters to that mixed media on my background. Now, Distress Oxides react with water in a really magical way. So you sprinkle the water on, or splatter water on. If you roll a paper towel over to just soak up the excess, it leaves almost like a kind of marbled effect. It's really hard to explain. I'll pop a link in the description box below to the Papermaze blog. So on the blog, I have given a photo example of water splatters on Distress Oxide versus water splatters on Distress Ink, so you can see the difference. And it just gives this lovely marbled effect. It lifts the colour up a little bit, and it's really, really pretty. So I've done that with all of the colours, just splattered water all the way over, rolled a paper towel over to dry. I've added some foam behind my hexagon so I can raise those up. Got my photo in place. And I've embellished with some bits from the Icon Ephemera pack, Icon die cuts, I think it might have been called, from that Fernwood collection. And the photo I've printed in black and white because there was loads of different colours in the photo, and it would have clashed with the colours of my hexagons and mixed media, so I've gone for black and white. It's a photo of my little boy at the model village in God's Hill on the Isle of Wight. And he stood behind a little garden gnome, one of those ones where like the head's cut out and you pose. which is why I've used the gnome ephemera piece. Now, if you know me well, you'll know that I am not one for gnomes or gonks or whatever you call them, anything like that. They're just not for me. But it really worked well with this photo, and it's probably the only time you will ever see me use a gnome on a layout. But I had it, and I'm never going to use it for anything else, so it was perfect for this photo. So I found a home for him on this layout. I've also added a little greenhouse just behind him there. That's because we were at the model village and there were loads of little model houses and buildings and things, so that worked well. And then I've also got some toadstools and some leaves and flowers, just because it was all outside, loads of hedges and flowers and things growing around the village. So all of those things kind of tied in nicely with my memory of the day. I've also added a title underneath that. It says My Beautiful World. I've used one of the black and white icon pieces just to bring in a bit more black and white to go with my photo. And I've also fussy cut a couple of those butterflies and dragonflies from the speciality vellum. It's foiled with gold foiling on it, so I've got a few of those on as well. And once I've got all of that in place, I'm coming back to my mixed media. So it's quite often I don't do all my mixed media in one go. I build it up in layers. You could have done this section or this area, the splatters, before adding all the hexagons and ephemera, but I'm doing it after so that some of the splatters go on top of the patterned papers as well. But I'm just using the same colour Distress Oxide inks. I'm smushing them down onto a bit of plastic packaging, spraying a bit of water on, and you can see almost how creamy that looks on the packaging there. And I'm using a paintbrush to add some splatters. Now, the smaller head paintbrush you use, the finer your splatters will be. And I also find if I use a fan paintbrush, I get really fine splatters. Obviously, the bigger the head on your paintbrush, the bigger and wetter your splatters are going to be. So I use a kind of medium-sized brush for my splatters. I have one favourite that I tend to pull out all the time. It's that blue-handled one you probably see in all my videos. I gave you a close-up shot of the bristles just now. Nothing special about this brush. It came from a really cheap set, but I just love the way it splatters on my page, and you can kind of get a variation of sizes with the splatters as well. So I've just gone around using each of the ink pads to add sort of tone on tone, as we call it, splatters to each of those mixed media areas. And then I'm just getting these foiled butterflies stuck down. I'm using glossy accents, which you can also get from Papermaze. I love glossy accents for anything like acrylic or vellum. I use it for my sequins as well. It doesn't take very long to dry, and it's a super strong hold as well, so I always use that for things like that. And coming back to the mixed media again, now my splatters are dried, I'm going to add some gold metallic acrylic paint. And again, I've just added this to some packaging, watered it down a bit, and I'm using my favourite brush to splatter that. I've covered my photo up so that I don't get any splatters on my little boy's face. Using the same paintbrush, and this time I'm going all over the hexagons and the embellishments as well. I want the whole page to have some gold on it, and I've used gold because that ties in nicely with those foiled vellum butterflies and dragonfly from that speciality paper. And then I'm not too worried about that drying. I'm going to come in with some white as well. Now this is white gesso that I'm using, again watered down on some packaging. I prefer to use gesso for my splatters rather than a white acrylic paint, because I find that it sits on the surface of the patterned papers and the die cuts and whatever I've got better, whereas acrylic paint will soak through into the paper. There's no gesso on any of this, remember. So I find that acrylic paint soaks through and then it takes on the colour of whatever's underneath it, whereas the gesso sits on top a bit more, so stays a truer white. And you can see it here in the close-ups when the paint is, or the gesso is dry, how white that has stayed. And that is my layout finished for today. So I hope you've enjoyed it and it's given you some inspiration in trying out some Distress Oxides. Like I said, you can use these with water as well as wet mixed media and with a packaging technique. I've focused more on the dry today. Really simple technique. Doesn't need any level of mastering or skill to do. So do head over to the Papermaze website, have a look at these Distress Oxides and do have a play because they are so much fun. And like I said, I'll be back later in the month with another mixed media layout for you, next time using wet mixed media and getting a bit messier. So I shall see you next time.